Welcome everybody. So, I got one of my favorite people walking the planet here today with me on this beautiful day in Los Angeles. Early morning. I apologize about that, man.
No, you know what? It's anytime I can drive through rush hour traffic in Los Angeles, that's the start of a good day.
It's a beautiful day.
Everything in the day will be better than how it started.
Well,
so
you're welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
It's all downhill from here.
Yeah.
This is my man. He's a comedian, author, just a great human being. Steve Hofstetter, man.
Well, thanks for having me, man.
No, you had to come on, man. We've been talking about this forever.
Yeah. We've been talking about this since before you had the podcast.
Yeah, before I had the podcast.
You were like, you want to do my podcast that doesn't exist? I was like, that sounds great. When's it not going to happen?
When's it not going to happen? I was going to have you on as the first guest, actually. And then, because I was in the middle of Harvey. So, it delayed the studio build out and everything. And then you came down for the benefit. We held a Harvey benefit, a comedy benefit, and you were so gracious to come down and give time and jokes to people that needed it, and it went to charity, good charity.
Can we talk about that benefit for a sec?
To what?
Can we talk about that benefit for a second? Because there were so many aspects that were just phenomenally interesting to me. I mean, it was great to be a part of something like that.
Right.
But when that happens, you see the best in human nature and the worst in human nature. Because the best in human nature was the people who came out, who supported, who donated money, who took care of each other. You saw the comics who all donated their time, and that was amazing. But then you saw there were a couple different things. One, the table of girls who came out because they wanted to have sex with you. That was like so clear. There was this table of girls who did not care about the show at all. And they were right there in the front. They were talking through everybody else's set, and they were just making eyes at you the whole time. And then they finally got kicked out. And it's like, how low class do you have to get thrown out of a hurricane benefit?
And the funny thing is, so I'm trying to, because it was my first time ever doing comedy, and so I numbed myself a little bit, so I got a little drunk, helped out a little bit. But so I think as the manager comes up to me, he's like, do you want to kick these girls out? I was like, what girls? It's like, do you these girls in the front, they're making a lot of racket, you want to kick them out? And I hadn't really paid attention because you just I was drunk. And so
well, also it's your first time doing stand-up. You're so in your own head.
I don't know what's tolerable and what's not.
Meanwhile, the rest of us are just like, kick them out, please. They're the worst.
And so I was like, I mean, it's a comedy show, man. I was like, I'll put it on the other comics because if they know what's tolerable, I have no idea.
All in favor,
right? And so they finally kicked them out. And when they left, the crowd went crazy. I was like, oh shit, I probably should have made that call.
Yeah, no, but you didn't know. Also, by the way, for the people listening and watching at home or in various truck stops, Arian, you were a natural up there, man.
Man.
There are so many people who, and we have video of this that I am desperately trying to get you to release.
You're right. We need to let it go
because it was fun to watch. It was a lot of fun to watch. You were in your element up there. A couple jokes didn't work out, but for the most part.
But to your credit, you were like, "Don't do this joke. It's not ready yet." And that's when the liquor had set in. I was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna do this joke."
Yeah, like, he can't tell me what I can and can't do. And then but it was also your recovery after the joke, where you're just like, Steve said I shouldn't do that joke. Yeah, and I probably shouldn't have done that joke. But and then the other terrible thing in human nature that comes out with events like that are the people who get on you about not doing a similar event for another tragedy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is just nuts. Like I saw, because I'm tweeting about it a lot. I'm posting it on Instagram and all that stuff. And there are people who are just like, well, are you going to do something for the, I think at the time there were fires in Northern California.
Okay, yeah.
They were like, you do something for the fires in Northern California?
Right,
I was like, one thing at a time.
This is insane.
Also, like, I have a very specific connection to this area because, like, I ran a weekend comedy club in Houston for 2 years.
Yeah, okay.
And so, I had a connection. Obviously, you have a connection there. You played there, you live there. And it just people who are... It's the same kind of thing where, like, you'll post something about, I have, obviously I'm a big dog person. Super. And so, I got my dog with me in studio right now.
Yes, if you guys hear various grumblings, he brought Walter with him.
Yeah, so, Walter's waltering around right now.
Definitely waltering around.
And so, like I'll post stuff, like there was that whole awful thing in China where they have like this dog eating thing. There's like literally an event. I'm blanking on where it is now. Ricky Gervais was very outspoken about it. And I posted something about it, and people were just like, what about the poverty in America? You could concentrate on China right now. I was like, what do you this is one, just because you care about one thing doesn't mean you have to tackle everything at one time.
But that's the thing is like part of that is like we've become, because we're globally connected now.
Yeah.
We've become so desensitized to horror that like you can only give care to one thing at a time. Like it's hard to care about everything. You'll get depressed.
Yeah. I also love the people who will be like, well, you've never said anything about blah blah blah, and I'm like, actually, I've said a ton of stuff about that, just not all in this one tweet. Like, look, they gave us 280 characters now, but that's still not a ton. It's
not enough. It's not enough.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a microcosm of America right now.
Yeah, but
lack of searching for accurate information. So if they really wanted to care about what you cared about, they would look and see your views. But they don't care enough. So
yeah. Oh, I love when I love like when people are like, oh, suddenly you care about politics, and I was like, I've been a political comedian since I've been a comedian.
Right.
Like suddenly you care to read one thing I wrote.
Right.
So that happens. But anyway, the point is, overall, the benefit was a lovely time.
It was a lovely time.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming out.
Yeah, people, packed in that club, and it was fun. It was fun to see you do stand-up, because there are so many people who, every time someone says to me, like, oh, I think I could be a comic, the nicest I am in response to that is like, oh, okay. Like, that's the nicest.
Yeah.
Usually it's much more like, you sure about that?
Yeah.
I want to, because stand-up is a very specific art form, and it's something where the best comics bombed for years.
Yeah.
And so, literally the best of all time. And then you've got the people who are like, oh, but I'll be different. Be like, really?
Yeah.
Really? You're going to be better?
Percentages are low.
Than the best? Yeah.
Percentages are low.
Yeah.
But the problem is, like, you'll have, like, inner circles, and you'll, like, make them laugh, and you think you start to think you're funny. But, like, when you have somebody who does it for a living, like I think I'm a pretty funny guy, but then like I get around you, one of my friends is Neil Brennan, so I get around people who do this for a living.
Yeah,
and I realize like I'm not that funny. I'm okay, like I'm okay.
You are way funnier than I am good at football.
I mean, that's probably accurate.
Yeah. But, I mean, like if we were to try to do each other's professions, I might. You'd do much better than I would do.
I'd excel more than you would have.
Yeah. But you do have the type of funny that can work at stand-up, which is why I think you did well. And you all
because I'm an asshole.
No, it's not always being an asshole. And thanks for saying that. That's what my profession is. I mean, it is a little bit.
You're definitely a professional asshole.
Even when I'm off stage, but I think the other thing that you have that you need as a stand-up comic, and usually this is what takes years to develop, is the not caring.
Right.
Is the being willing to just throw something out there and see how it goes.
Right.
And I don't know if that's inherent in your personality or that's just because you're at the point in life where you don't need to care.
Right.
Right. Like I don't know if it's because you've had prior success at something else or because you just always been someone who, I didn't know you when you were younger.
Right.
So... But that is such an important piece of being a successful stand-up, and that's something that you had that first day. That I think that's why it worked.
I think it's an accumulation of my apathy for human nature and
general disdain for people.
Yeah, right. And so like I don't like, but that mixed with I've had thick skin over the years for all the criticism you get being in the public limelight.
Yeah.
So all of that put together, at this point I'm retired, so I'm like, okay, you don't laugh at my jokes. That's not gonna change my day. So
yeah. I love the refrain that you had where you're just like, I'm not a comedian, so it's okay if this doesn't go well.
But like it was my fallback. So if I said a joke, I said, well, I'm not a comedian, and that would get laughs every time. So I'm like, it's a pretty cool fallback to have. But that's when I realized if I was really doing this, that couldn't be part of my.
No, you would develop a different thing. It's what we call a saver line.
Saver line.
Yeah, which is if a joke doesn't work,
it's free game you're giving out too, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so a saver line is something you have in your back pocket for when a joke doesn't work, because a joke sometimes will not work, and so you have to be ready for that, and that's what.
What's the psychology of that of writing jokes as far as you don't know what's gonna work because
we're getting in the weeds now.
We're getting you're giving away my secret.
No, I'm happy to talk about it.
But just because like when I think of something funny, right?
Yeah.
I don't think the majority of people, and I could be wrong. It could be complete my conjecture, but I don't think the majority of people think like I do. So what I think is funny, I don't think like the majority of people will think is funny. So like if I'm writing a joke, I'm like, I'm not sure if people will think that's funny. How do you balance that between I think it's funny, but I also have to write for people?
You write for your crowd. You write for you, and your crowd comes to you. A lot of comedians make the mistake, especially early on, and some for their entire career, of writing to please the room. Like I was a better comedian in 2008 than I was in 2010, because in 2008 I was still at the point where I was just writing what I thought was funny, and then I was hitting the road and playing a lot of these just like, strip mall one night gigs, right. Just some bar in some tourist town, wants to throw $200 at comedy and see if it sticks. Right. And at the time I was like, absolutely. Right. And so then I was writing to make those crowds laugh, and I got away from myself. And I realized it. I had such a moment. It stands out so much. I was doing a gig in this small school in North Carolina. The student activities advisor, who's the one who's like in charge of bringing a comic in, had a job. It was their last 2 weeks, and they were going to another job, so they had checked out.
Oh yeah,
this was like beyond senior slump. This person did not care, and so they didn't promote the show. They didn't have a good setup. I get there, it's basically like a poorly lit gym. The stage is a giant table. It's just a big table, which, by the way, maybe 90 seconds in, starts tipping over, and I had to like jump off of it.
That's insane.
Yeah. There's maybe 20 people there. I had set up like my merch table, which is, like after the show, it's like, signed stuff, t-shirts, stuff like that. People stole both t-shirts that were on the table, as well as the 2 Sharpies.
Oh my God.
And I had asked I had said to the guy after, I was like, hey man, there was someone supposed to man this,
right.
Like there's supposed to be a student at it. And he just goes, oh yeah, I guess I didn't realize. And I was like, you guys want to pay for the shirts then? And he's like, no. I was like, all right.
So that one up to experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jesus.
And it was just a terrible gig. The lighting, the sound, everything about it sucked. And afterward, and I had a young comic opening for me. And afterward, we're in the car, and I'm just miserable. And I'm just talking about how I don't want to do stand-up anymore. I hate this so much. This is what I have to do. And he just goes, how much you get paid tonight? I was like, what? He goes, yeah, how much did you get paid tonight? And I was like, $1,500. And he goes, and you're upset? I was like, yeah, that's true. That's pretty much, it was just like that gig sucked, but that gig was basically a long line at the ATM.
Right.
Like that's all that was.
Right.
That was, and a comic I'm buddies with, Adam Hunter, told me early on, he was like, when gigs like that happen, it's someone else paying you to get better.
Perspective.
Yeah, it's someone paying you to learn. And so I started thinking about that gig, and part of why I hated it was because I was doing this garbage material I wasn't proud of, and it wasn't working. And so then I was like, wait a minute. I should talk about the stuff I want to talk about, and then if they don't laugh, I still got to talk about the stuff I wanted to talk about.
Right.
But if they don't laugh and you're being hacky, if they don't laugh and you are, shucking and jiving and trying to be something that you're not, then like that's miserable.
Double whammy.
Absolutely.
That's interesting to me because a lot of people don't see that side of comedy. A lot of people see the handful of comics who are like mainstream and getting $1 million for whatever that they do, but all of them had that road. All of them had that start. All of them had that where they were playing in front of 20 people, where they were just on the brink of quitting, and they don't see that grind. They don't see that grind. So that grind defines you as a human.
At any given point, there are 1,000 comedians making a living that you've never heard of.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that. They're the guys who play cruise ships, and that's all they do. And there are the guys who play colleges, and that's all they do. And there are the guys who play these strip mall comedy clubs. That's all they do. And they make 30 to 50 grand a year, and they get by, and you don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of comedy. You know, there are very few Kevin Harts out there. But you are right that every one of them went through that at some point. And whether that was, because there are kind of two ways. In the States, there are kind of two ways to do it. There's you stay in New York and LA and hope that you get noticed by the industry. And you make no money you basically starve for 5 to 10 years.
Jesus.
Or you have a day job and it just takes a ton out of you. And then there are the road guys, I was one of those, where you make a living on the road, but it takes longer because you don't get seen as often by the industry. So it's kind of a choice of like starve completely for a shorter amount of time or hate yourself for a longer amount of time. Neither are great options, but if you truly love it and it's what you want to do, you know, and I compare it to sports a lot because I find it to be a lot like minor league baseball. Where the vast majority of people, you know, you're in small towns, you're making hardly any money. The vast majority of people in it don't ever make it out, don't ever make it to the majors, but you do it because you love it.
Right. I kind of liken it to being like an independent artist.
Yeah.
Like trying to, earlier in the industry. Now it's like
you liken being an independent artist to being an independent artist?
Yep.
That's exactly what it is.
That's what I said, yeah. Well, I meant a musical.
I know what you mean. I'm just being a dick. Being a professional asshole.
Professional asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how does that work as far as like touring and stuff? Like, do you set up your own gigs? Like, how does that work?
In the beginning, yeah. You know, in the beginning, I mean, the phrase, you know, beg, borrow, and steal. I mean, you don't actually steal, but you certainly beg and borrow.
All right.
I guess the phrase should be beg, borrow, and then beg again. Beg, borrow, and apologize for not paying back.
Beg, borrow, and apologize.
You just take whatever you can get, and you go through. You know, the way that I did it was I would everything from like you pass through a town and you do what's called a guest spot at a club, where you know you call up a local club and you go, "Hey, I'm from out of town. I'm passing through. Can I get 5 minutes on a show?" And some of them say no, and some of them say yes, and then you do that, and then you hope that they see that, and they go, oh, well, you're funny enough to then hire you for paid work in the future. Most of the time, even when you're good, and they will say, oh, we'd love to have you back, most of the time, you'll never hear from them again.
Wow.
Every now and then, a club actually follows through. Because what you have to realize is that there are 52 weeks a year. I know most people know that statistic, but there are 52 weeks a year.
Tell me more.
Yeah, I know. What? What kind of flat Earth bullshit is this? I'm a flat calendarist. So there are 52 weeks a year, and they've already got 52 comics. So who is it whose work are you taking? Unless it's a brand new club. And every now and then, you know, there are 5 to 10 comics each year that will leave because they will get bigger than that club. And so there will be 5 to 10 roster spots that will open up, and there will be 1,000 comics trying to get those spots. So you can never take it personally.
Right.
And so what I would do in the beginning is any kind of gig I could create. I realized early on that like competing for gigs with other comics is very difficult. So creating your own gig is an easier road. Right. And so what I would do is I would call up Elks Lodges and, and fraternities and sororities, and I would do this whole thing of like, it's a fundraiser.
Right.
I'd be like, okay, here's how it works. The first $500 in tickets you sell, I get that. There's no guarantee. If you only sell $100 of tickets, that's all I get. And then after that first 500, we split it where I get a third and you keep 2/3 everything on top of that. So if you can sell, 300 tickets, you guys will make a bunch of money. I'll be happy. If you guys sell 10 tickets, there's no risk. Mm-hmm. And we did that a bunch my first year on the road, and sometimes I would drive 10 hours and make $40, and sometimes I would drive 2 hours and make $1,000.
Right.
And it would you just have to realize that it evens out over the course of the year. And that's how I got my start.
That's insane. Man, that grind, that is 100%. But like to continue to follow through day in day, like I mean, that's why I like it to just be an independent artist.
Yeah.
because you have to believe in yourself when nobody believes in you. To me, it's hard because I'm an artist as well. I like to fancy myself an artist, but I'm releasing a music project here soon. But that
was another one, by the way, and sorry to interrupt, but like when Humble first played that for me,
right,
it was one of those things where I'm like, I like Arian as a person, and I hope I don't have to pretend to enjoy this, And then I listened to it, and I was like, oh, this is actually really good.
Oh man, I appreciate it.
I mean, it really was. It was one of those things where I'm like, can I have this so I could drive around listening to it? Like it was really, really good.
I appreciate it.
And
matter of fact, we've remixed it since you've heard the last one, so it sounds way better now.
Okay, it'd be funny though if you remix it and then I get it and I'm like, this used to be good.
This is shitty. What did you guys go back?
Yeah. Can I have the May version of this?
The May version. Nah, but so I'm releasing a project, but this is for me, right? This is my almost like bucket list. Like I've retired and I can do whatever I want to do now, and so I'm doing that. I'm having podcasts, I'm releasing music, I'm writing scripts, I'm just doing things that I love to do, and so I'm not banking on this. I have something invested in it, but what's more invested in it is how I feel about the art, right? So I'm very proud of this project.
Yeah.
But if it touches people, that's icing on the cake. But if it doesn't, at least if you're a fan of me, you can know how I feel via Sonics. But as far as comedy is concerned, like, how do you continue to bolster the ego if you're unsure how you're being perceived? Does that make sense? Because it's a subjective thing. I went into sports and it was like, if I get 100 yards, I had a good game. It is what it is. But as something subjective as music or comedy, like, how do you continue to have confidence that you're getting the job done if it's such a subjective thing?
I think delusion is a great asset. I actually used to do a podcast called High Confidence, High Confidence, Low Self-Esteem.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what it takes to be a comic. The idea of saying, I'm the best, please think I'm the best.
Right.
And it's those two conflicting things, because if you have high confidence and high self-esteem, then you're never going to get better because you already believe you're the best. And there are people who do comedy. I don't even want to call them comedians. There are people who do comedy who are like that. One of my favorite moments was there was a guy, you show me a guy who kills every show and I'll show you someone who's never killed because he doesn't know the difference.
Right.
And there was this guy, we used to, the way I actually met Adam Hunter was we used to all do the show at Westwood Brewco, which was this bar outside UCLA. And it was a wonderful moment in time where, we would all just hang out there. It was 2 shows a week, and the shows would go for like 4 hours because the college kids would come and go. So there'd be a new audience like every hour. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you'd go up twice in one show because the audience would have completely flipped.
Wow.
It was a lot of fun, and it was difficult. So it made you be a better comic. But anyway, so a lot of us were friends that would do it because we would do it over and over again. We'd see each other. And there was another show on the Queen Mary in Long Beach. And one by one, comics who were on that show were showing up at Westwood and just being like, oh, that crowd was the worst. Oh, my God, what a terrible setup for a show. They were all just complaining about how bad it was. And then there was a comic who didn't realize that everyone else had already came and told us what happened. And he shows up. Oh, that was the best. Killed. That room was packed. It was incredible. And just over. And everybody's just laughing. And which is probably the only time he's heard the laughs. But
that's insane.
Yeah. So you need that low self-esteem in order to get better. You need that self-doubt in order to get better, but you also need enough confidence to know that you should be at the front of a room telling people what's funny.
That's a life gem, honestly. Like walking that tightrope of humility and confidence.
Yeah,
because it's a balancing act. It is. You have to be humble enough to say I'm trying to improve, but also confident enough to say I'm the best one in the room, which is kind of, it's bipolar, really.
It is. So I have this theory that we only exist as the sum total of how everyone else sees us. Let
me sit on that one more time. Say that one more.
We exist as the sum total of how everyone else sees us. So
I think that's a dangerous way to look at it.
Well, let me
explain. Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm not
I
there
fucking
yet.
disagree.
I'm not there yet. Well, then you see me as someone who's wrong. So in this moment, no, but
once again, I'm correct
of how everyone in the world sees you. So,
including yourself.
No. How you see yourself might determine your actions, and it might determine how it might affect how other people see you.
So let me put on my philosophy hat.
Okay.
Before you finish. So if I determine my actions, but I'm not the sum total of what I think of myself, but I'm determining my actions predicated off of how other people see me. In essence, so I'm projecting how I view myself via them as the vehicle.
Yes, and how you see yourself versus the total of how everyone else sees you, the difference between those two things,
right.
That chasm is delusion.
That is, I like that.
So, because there are plenty of people who, there are total assholes who see themselves as the victim. You know, there are people who believe they're wonderful dancers, and you're just like, what do you do? Stop moving,
bro. That's
you know.
I got a couple friends like that.
Yeah, there are, and so that's delusion. And as a comic, I think you exist on stage how the sum total of the audience sees you.
That's okay.
So how you dress affects that. How you stand affects that. Your pattern of speech affects that, and your joke certainly affects it. But you cannot control who those people are. They all come in with a preconceived notion of comedy, maybe a preconceived notion of you. My mother once came to a show, and the headliner, with this first starting my career, it was like my first full weekend hosting at a club, and I was really excited about it. It was on Long Island. We're from Queens, so she came out to the show. Now she had just lost my stepfather. He had passed maybe a month before. So she comes to the show. The headliner was hilarious and did this 15-minute bit that just crushed about funeral parlors and about the experience and how bad funeral parlors are at actually making you feel better. And there was one line especially that was just so funny where he's just he's crying, and then they're like, oh, here, take this tiny cup of water. And he's like, oh, so cold, hurts my teeth. It was just very, very funny. And everybody had a wonderful time, and my mother hated it. And the reason for it was because all it did was make her think of the husband she just lost.
Right.
And the entire time, she's just sitting there in her head going through that loss over and over again. You cannot control what people bring into the show. So you have to do your best, but the idea is that you exist how they see you.
That's a dangerous place to live, though. But that's why I say it's so interesting being a comic, right? So one of the things I actually wanted to talk about was what I don't see, and I could be totally wrong, but I don't see a lot of conservative comedy. I just don't.
No, because our job is to be self-aware.
I hear you, man. But because I like to ride the political spectrum fence.
Okay.
But overwhelmingly, there's more liberal comedy than there is conservative.
Oh, it's
comedy.
Probably 90%.
What is that dynamic of conservatism that doesn't birth comedy?
Well, comedy.
I think there are some.
Comedy is a defense mechanism, and when I meet another comic, I like to say, "Hey, what are you in for? Right. What happened to you to make you funny?
Right.
What'd you go through?"
Right.
And so, whenever there's a quote unquote ruling class ain't funny,
right? Because
the ruling class is, I don't like throwing the word privilege around, but the idea of is it? And obviously, there are tons of poor people who are conservative. In fact, it is their base. It's that I don't know if you've ever read that. I think they call it "What's Wrong with Kansas." The idea, it's this whole theory of why would poor farmers vote for policies that directly hurt them?
Fear mongering.
Yes. But the idea of punching down, for instance.
Right.
Punching down isn't funny. Punching up is funny. And so,
go ahead.
That's okay.
Because it's interesting. What's the psychology behind that? Do you feel
the psychology of that is
why is that funny as opposed to punching down?
So there's a great book about comedy written by a professor named Eddie Tafoya, and and I apologize, I don't remember the name of the book, but you can. He's written a couple.
And there's Google.
Yeah, you can Google Eddie Tafoya, and it's a good book, and I apologize for not knowing the name, but where he talks about part of humor is knocking something down a peg. It's, every joke, his theory, and I like this theory, is that every joke is the relationship between the id and the superego. And it is almost parent to child. So an example is, if I'm on stage and I'm making fun of the president, I'm a child making fun of the parent. And the audience are children with me laughing at the foibles of the parent. Whereas, if I'm on stage and I'm making fun of someone without power, then it's like, oh, well, then they're laughing at the child, and that's okay too. But and I don't want to botch his theory. I should just read a page from the book. Stop, Google this, get the book. But anyway, the idea of like, it's bringing the superhuman down to being human. So if the example that they use in the book that I loved was, say there's a king back in the day, and he's, everyone's afraid of him, and then he farts.
Right.
It's hilarious. Right. Because it humanizes him immediately. And so it's that
old David Goliath tale, basically.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So, okay, so to play devil's advocate.
Okay.
Why then do comics not like hecklers? Because is that not the same dichotomy? Is that not the same?
Well, I think comics don't like hecklers, and I happen to be an expert on this subject.
Yeah, so I wrote it down as we were talking about it, so it's a beautiful segue on my part, by the way. But it's
nicely done. We should. Do you have an applause sound effect?
I mean,
for that one?
My engineer guy, he'll do that. He'll put it in right there.
Fix it in post.
Yeah, for sure. But if anybody out there listening, please go to Steve Hofstetter's YouTube page, and it's the Hofstetter, right?
Yeah, the Hofstetter.
YouTube.com/the Hofstetter, and he has bunches of clips of him owning hecklers. Like, it's the funniest shit. It's actually I found out about you. Before I knew who you were, I was subscribed to your YouTube channel. But it's hilarious wit. But just like I'm saying, I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm not saying I agree with hecklers. I'm saying by that same ideology of it's funny to take the king down, it's funny to see him be human. As you're sitting in the audience, is that not kind of the same child-parent dynamic?
So, in this case, are you saying that the heckler is trying to take the king down?
Yeah.
Okay.
A drunk guy trying to take the king down.
There's a lot of aspects to that. First of all, comedians don't like hecklers because they are interrupting what we came to do.
Right.
The premise that I would go on stage and just be silent until someone yells something out. Like, how would my act work if I needed hecklers?
Right.
Like, just the idea of, like, nobody wants to, at this point, nobody wants to interact. Well, where are you guys from? Like, that would be miserable.
Right.
Now, it is something I happen to know how to do. But I think the psychology behind why the rest of the audience likes seeing a heckler get taken down is because they are putting themselves as the king. The heckler is saying, I'm more important than everyone else in this room. I bought a ticket for, I spent my $20, and that's going to, and by the way, that's the level I'm at right now. It's not like I spent my $150 for these theater seats.
Right.
Like, no, it's like I spent my $20. And I even paused before it because I'm like, usually it's $15.
Right. No, I noticed that, but I thought it was just a miss.
Yeah. No, I mean, it depends on where. Look, when it's my tour, it's 20. Okay. Anyway, so it's them saying, because I bought a ticket, I am more important than everyone else in this room who also bought a ticket. The audience should all be equals. There's no, because if you were to interview everyone in that audience, in life, they're not equals. Some of them are titans of industry, and some of them are broke college students that cobbled together enough for a ticket, Right. And a huge spectrum in between. But in that moment, they're all equal. In that moment, they have all come to put aside whatever they have in their lives to come together as an audience. And so when one of them decides, I'm better than the rest of you, everyone in that audience is like, fuck that guy.
Right.
That guy needs to be taken down a peg.
Right.
And so,
okay, I got you.
So when the comedian knocks that person back down, that is like watching, I mean, if you put it back into olden times, the idea of someone trying to usurp power and then them getting knocked back down to being a common folk again.
So I was just looking at it the wrong way. So I was looking at the comic as the king and the heckler as the common folk.
No, the comic is the Dragon Slayer.
Bam. That's a beautiful way to,
Yeah, the comic is standing up for, and that really is the psychology of it. The way that I get the crowd on my side in these heckler interactions is I let it happen for a second. Because if you go in too quick, and I've made that mistake, but if you go in too quickly, then you're attacking one of them. It's my people. But
God, what a psychology! Like
there's a lot of psychology.
That's
to
insane.
It. Yeah, but if you let them, if you give them enough rope to hang themselves, as the phrase goes,
right.
You can say anything you want. There was one, I didn't get this one on tape. I was so mad. I accidentally double clicked the record button.
Right.
And every now and then there's one where the tape didn't work for some reason, and I just get in the car and I'm just screaming, angry. Right. I'm just this was such a good one. There was one where there was a bachelorette party. The bane of any comedian's existence.
Really?
There's a bachelorette party, and they were actually very well behaved, except for one of them who just would not shut up. Right. And I, started talking to her to be like, who are you? Be like, are you the one getting married? And she's like, no, I'm the maid of honor. I'm like, okay, so it's someone else's day. It's your best friend's day. And you won't shut the fuck up. And you're the maid of honor. That means you have to give a speech at the wedding. That means they're going to let you talk more. This is terrible. And she just kept, and she wouldn't shut up. And so finally, the kill shot was, I said, I wish you luck at the wedding. I hope you catch the bouquet. And she had already said that she was married. And she goes, oh, I'm already married. I go, yeah, but your husband's going to leave you and you're probably going to die alone, so I'm wishing you luck. And the audience went nuts. Right, and the reason why, I told a woman, I hope her husband left her and she dies alone.
Right.
And they cheered because they were like, we were thinking way worse. We wanted way worse for her. And it's the psychology of it. Once they, as they say in Gladiator, you win the crowd, you win the day.
Is that part of comedy that's so often in cohorts with depression? I mean, not to be disrespectful, but it's an honest question.
It's not disrespectful
because a part of you has to see. Because I suffer from the same whatever it is. Yeah. That a part of me sees the end game all the time, and the end game is fucking hilarious. Like, we take things so seriously in life, but at the end we're all just gonna die, and it's funny to me, but it's not funny to other people. But when you point out little shit like that, it's fucking hilarious. But those how that sits on your brain constantly in every situation.
Yeah, but you just gotta drive one exit at a time.
But yeah, 100%.
You can't just be like, this road will end if I keep going. It's like, well, it's not ending now. Jeff Sheen actually has a wonderful joke about how you never read a dumb suicide note. Because smart people are the ones who get depressed enough to kill themselves. You never read a suicide note that's like, you guys are fucking faggots. Because that person isn't smart enough to be tortured,
right?
And only tortured people end up,
Right.
Certainly not advocating suicide. Please, if you are considering it, speak to someone, get help
for sure.
But
you guys are faggots.
I think what goes hand in hand with depression partly is the gigs I was talking about earlier, the grind. The idea of, because the way it works is you see little tiny bits of progress, but you feel like you're never going to come out of it. And then one day the clouds part. One day something happens. And because it's a series of breaks. I was on The Late Late Show in 2008, and I was like, this is it, man.
Right.
I'm going to be famous. And then within a year, I did 3 more TV appearances. And I was like, everything's awesome. And then I wasn't on TV again for 4 years. And which is tough, but you just have to, you have to plow through. And there are some people who can't plow through. And another way that I compare comedy to being an athlete is, so much of being an athlete is perseverance. How many people do you know that have the story of, oh, I was great in high school? I had a 95-mile-an-hour fastball in high school.
Everybody.
Yeah. And what happened? They either got injured or it was too much for them.
Somebody else fucked me.
Right. Right. And so with comedy, so much of it is just not getting injured emotionally.
Right.
It's just it's keeping off the disabled list or the injured reserve, or depending on which sport you compare it to. And it's just plowing through, and it's just being able to take those hits. Now, substance abuse is a huge problem in my community.
Mm-hmm. Which you don't. When we first met,
Yeah,
we was at the Laugh Factory, and I was really drunk, and I was like, "Do you want a drink?" And you're like, "No, I don't drink." I'm like, "What the fuck? You unicorn?"
There are a lot of comics that don't drink, and
which I didn't know. I thought everybody gets drunk and
well, it's because that happens, and then eventually you go, no, stop.
Yeah.
John Panette, who died at like 52 years old, had a great quote where he said, if you have a half a bottle of Jack in you, you don't mind that you're in a motel in Topeka.
Mm.
No offense if you live in Topeka, but it's not.
I mean,
it's not the dream. It's not what every little boy sitting there going, one day I'm performing at Bullfrogs Live in Topeka. That is a real place I performed at in Topeka.
Is it really?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I'm gonna be famous.
Oh yeah, it's a sports bar that did comedy sometimes.
Nice.
One of the better road gigs, actually.
Really?
So yeah, at least they had a separate room.
There it is.
So and that's part of it. And you can go down a dark path when you're alone and wasted. And I had to learn to do the road the right way. And part of that is take less money, but take gigs you want to do.
Mm.
Like, I can perform. You get paid more to perform in bad weather because less people want to do it.
Right.
Fewer people, I guess. So, and not only that, but bad weather is better for comedy because it's an indoor activity.
Yeah.
So the winter in the Midwest, those clubs are packed. The summer sucks. It's harder to draw.
Wow.
But I go there in the summer because I don't want to be head down, shivering on my way to my car, sit there for 10 minutes before it gets warmed up, just cursing, why am I here? I don't want that.
Right.
And so I made a conscious decision where I said, you know what? I'm not going to have that. And I will play the gigs that allow me to bring my own support with me so that when a gig goes wrong, I can laugh about it in the car with my buddies instead of texting a friend at home being like, this is how bad this is going right now.
Right.
And it's just a lot better to be around friends. And so there are devices that you can use to be more comfortable, that you can rely on, you can lean on, but there is a great deal of depression in comedy, and part of it is being self-aware.
No, seriously, yeah. I think that's it's life.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's 100% life. How did you make that pivot to capitalize? Because if you go to your YouTube channel, it's over 250,000 subscribers.
Yeah,
and it's just how did you learn to capitalize on the internet like you did?
So YouTube was a bit of an accident. I was touring with a comic named, because every now and then there'd be a club that would film, and then I would get the footage of that and like put a little clip up. Mm-hmm. And the reason the heckler stuff I started putting it up, I never wanted to put up my material I was currently doing because I didn't want people to come to a show and know a joke ahead of time. Right. So I was touring with a comic named Brian Brunner, and he had one of those little flip cameras.
Right.
And after the show, we just went around, and we were in a college town, and we just thought it would be funny to just like, let's make a video, let's interview a bunch of people. And we're doing that. We're like, this is so much fun. And I was like, maybe I'll get one of these things. And I decided to, and I started just taping every show. And like those flip cameras, I mean, you put it in the back of the room, and it's just, as pale as I already am, like I just would barely show up on film. But you get the sound for the most part, you get it, and I started putting these clips up, and they just started going a little bit viral.
Right.
And I remember how excited I was. There was one clip, the first one that did well. I remember how excited I was when I had 30,000 views. I was like, this is amazing. And now, like, if any of my videos don't get 30,000, I'm like, damn it.
Right.
Was video sucking? It's lagging. Nobody likes this one.
Nobody likes it.
Right. And, because you adjust your expectations. But the thing that really did it was 2 years ago, just under 2 years ago, it was late March. I went to spring training with a couple of my buddies. We were all baseball fans. We're like, let's go to spring training. And we cobbled together enough gigs to pay for the trip, where I think out of pocket. We were each out of pocket about $30 for the trip.
Nice.
And we went to games in the day, and we did shows at night. And
that's dope.
Yeah, and most of the shows sucked, but they were enough to pay for it.
Right.
There's this one little bar in Titusville, Florida, which is a town it's a very sad place. It's where the space shuttle used to launch from.
Okay, yeah.
And when that stopped, the town did too. So public schools have closed, post offices have closed.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like one of these, I feel like it could be, like if they did a remake of Footloose, like this is where it could be set.
Never saw Footloose.
So it's about a sad town. So anyway, but a ton of people came out to the gig. I mean, literally, like, I think it was like a city council person was there and like the sheriff was there. I mean, it was, a lot of the town was there. They packed it out. It was wonderful. And we were really excited. And everybody was so appreciative because they were like, thanks for bringing comedy here. Right. And really, we were just like, thanks for giving the three of us $200. Right. We made $200 total for that gig. And that's only because the owner paid us a bonus because the place was packed out.
Wow.
And like we literally would have made $50 a piece for that gig. But we're filming. And there was a woman who interrupted a joke. I was doing a joke about how a lot of parents can come off as thinking they're special. And this woman interrupted me to think she was special. And she just leaned into the material so hard. And after the show, we got back. We drove, the hour and a half back to our hotel in Orlando because that was the cheapest one we could get. And I'm editing the clip, and I go to put it up, and I say, and the hotel internet's so bad that it like is uploading overnight. Right. But I finish editing it, and I say to my buddies, and I go, hey, I think this one will do well. I think this one will get like 10,000 views. I think this will do really well. And I wake up the next morning, and it has 50,000 views. Oh. And we're just like, what the fuck just happened? And we're on our way to another game. We're up, and this was like 6 a.m. because we're up driving to another game. We want to get there for batting practice and their day games. And as we're driving through the swamps of Florida, I'm just getting all these alerts. And it's like, it's the front page of Reddit, and it's like, and then Joe Rogan retweets it, and then it gets featured by a whole bunch of big Facebook accounts, and it's just this snowball down a hill. And in 3 days, it gets 3.5 million views.
That's crazy.
And my name is the #1 trending topic on Facebook.
That's awesome.
And we're just in this shitty little car, this shitty little rental car in Florida, having gotten $200 for that gig. Right. And I'm just sitting there going, like, I had thought everything was going to change with Ferguson, and that was a point where I'm like, I knew. Where it was like, nothing will be the same. It's going to calm down. Right. It's not going to be like this forever, but this is the tipping point. This is what I've been working toward for 14 years at the time.
That's crazy.
And it was just this, like, it was just such a cool moment. And what made it better was that I was with two friends when it happened. Right. And they also got to witness me going out of my mind, just being like, what's happening right now?
That's crazy, though.
And that's what it was for me.
That's always been extremely intriguing to me, how something goes viral.
Yeah.
Because like you just said, it's like a snowball effect. And there's really no rhyme or reason as to why it happens. Mm-hmm. But when it happens, like you can see, like you say, like it changed your life.
Yeah. I look back at it and I see why it went viral, but I didn't predict it at the time.
Right.
I thought it would do well.
Right.
But like
10,000.
Yeah, exactly. And now I think the clip, between all the time it's been copied and everything, it's just on my page is at over 5 mil, and I think in other places it's probably total of 10. And I look back and I go, okay, it makes sense because it was making fun of bad parents. Every good parent will laugh. Every non-parent will laugh. Every bad parent who doesn't realize they're a bad parent will also laugh because it is making fun of something that everyone thinks they're not. So no one feels like the victim in that joke.
Right.
Even though every joke has a victim. Every single joke has a victim. Right. But that allowed people, no one thought it was them.
Right.
And so it allowed everybody to get behind it. It was short. It was pithy. It didn't go on too long. That was, I think, a big thing of it. It was just long enough. It was also, the camera was in the back of the room, and so the footage was good, but it wasn't too professional.
Right.
Which also gives a level of realism to it. And just for whatever reason, that moment in time, it just worked. And then since then, I've had a couple other clips that have done well, but it was that base that allowed, I had 90,000 subscribers at the time.
Right. Which is still great.
Yeah, it's still great, but that was over like 8 years.
Right.
And then in a week, I got 45,000 more.
Yeah.
So that kind of changed things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's people, because I got a buddy that sells real estate here in LA. And he was telling me the other day, he's like, "Dog, I'm selling some of these houses for like $2 to $5 million, and they're YouTube stars." Like, it's a real.
That's not me yet.
Well, no, I'm just saying in general. I'm just saying in general how that has become a real avenue for people to aim towards.
Oh, it's a career. It's actually the number one when they talk to kids and they say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" It's now the number one thing that kids say.
YouTube star. Mm-hmm. Fucking no.
Yeah, but it's all it means is TV star. It's the same thing.
You just changed my mind.
To them,
yeah, you just changed my mind.
That's what it is.
Because we look at TV as the holy grail of entertainment.
Yeah.
But that shit is dying. And
it is.
And the internet is what's. You're right, 100% right. I didn't think about that.
Being on screen. It's being on screen.
Right.
It's people looking at you. The thing I love to see. Have you ever gone to whether it's a Best Buy or Fry's or somewhere that has a camera hooked up to one of the TVs?
Right.
Someone will take the camera and put it on their friend or put it on themselves. Be like, "Look, we're on TV," and they like get excited about it.
Right.
It's like, no, you're just looking at a piece of technology.
Technically, you're on TV.
Yeah, I guess it's just, there's a series of mirrors and circuits, and it's like no one made that decision that they wanted to see. No one else in the store is watching you, But people are so excited at the idea of being the focus, being on that screen. And so YouTube is just a different form of television.
Is YouTube, is that as, I don't say as, is Netflix as big as YouTube now, do you think?
Netflix actually carries more prestige because someone else still has to decide if you get to be on.
Right.
That's the real difference. YouTube, the reason why people are, will do the thing like, "Oh, YouTube star," is because there's no one there who's making that decision. So in a way, it matters more because it's completely democratic. Mm-hmm. And actually people are voting. But also in a way, you're like, yeah, but someone like Logan Paul can become a YouTube star because a bunch of children are stupid.
Right.
And
so I look at some people like who have millions of subscribers, and I look at their content, and it's like just so gimmicky, and it's cheesy.
Oh, it breaks my heart.
Yeah, but then it kind of. It's reaffirmation of my pessimism because it's like this is what people want to see. They want to see stupid shit.
But it's what some people want to see. But I mean,
the majority.
But
though.
TV's no different.
But I already felt that about TV. But then, like you said, you have a completely democratic process in YouTube where it says I let the people decide what's popular. And if you look at like a lot of the popular pages are fucking trash.
But if you also look at like popular shows, sometimes you're just like, how did this last this long?
Like what?
You ever see Silk Stockings?
Never saw Silk.
Oh, Silk Stockings is, you've got to go see this.
I don't think I do now that you said
it.
It
is the cheesiest, most garbagey. Even the opening credits is amazing. So Silk Stockings is basically
I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna write that down.
It's like, it was almost like the softest core porn because it was on like USA. This was early days of USA Network.
Right.
And so there was no nudity in it, but there were like bikini shots whenever they could.
Okay.
It was, I believe it's two detectives in Florida.
I think I've heard of it before.
Who are like, and every crime has to do with someone sexy. And it's just, it's so bad. So the opening montage is just like, someone's getting out of a pool in a bikini, and then there's a gunshot somewhere, and then cut to a briefcase exchange in a parking lot. And it's such cheesy garbage. And they had like 100 episodes.
I think I have seen this actually.
Yeah, it's so bad. It's like early Rob Estes was one of the guys. It was one of the stars.
I don't think I was like cognizant enough to like know what was going on. I was a kid, and I was like, okay, that's a show.
Yeah, I had to be 10 or 11 years old.
All right.
So I could, I've got I think like 8 years on you. So I'm sure you saw it in syndication or, in reruns or whatever it was. But like a show like that, to me, is just the holy grail of why the hell is this on the air. And I had a running joke with my ex where there would be like a new show and we would just call it Silk Stockings because it would just be, it's like, okay, that's just today's version of that.
Okay.
And so there's always been.
But I always told people this. I always felt like this, right? Not to cut you off, but I always felt like.
This is your show, man.
You're right. Shut the fuck up, I'm talking.
Yes.
But I always felt like fame is it's an arbitrary thing. Yeah. We can make whoever we want famous. All you have to do is put them in front of people all the time. They don't even have to have a talent. Like my man, and I'm not saying he doesn't have a talent per se, but LeVar Ball.
Yeah.
He became famous because people got tired of hearing him talk, which in turn made more people want to talk to him. Yeah. Which is fucking insane. But like he got famous. Like he's famous. He's opening pop-up shops for his clothing gear in China, in Lithuania, and places. That's insane.
Yeah, he got famous for not shutting up.
And but we made that, right? We who's that that woman with the kid
the
ballet Octomom is another one.
Yeah.
Like just anything. If you put people in front of the TV enough,
yeah,
they'll be famous.
Yeah,
so
reality stars.
And, there's just no substance. It doesn't have to.
But the difference is, and this is something. So 3 months in as a comic, there was something I had written that found its way to the booker of Last Call with Carson Daly.
Real quick, just for my understanding.
Yeah.
Grammatically, something I have written. Why is something I have wrote wrong? Something I wrote.
I'm the wrong person to ask.
Okay, cool. Go ahead.
I think I'm right.
I have no idea.
I don't know for sure.
I'm the awful.
Don't worry. Someone will write in the comments.
I'm the awfulist with grammar.
Yeah. I believe it's most awfulist, Arian. So, a written page that I had been a part of.
Now you're thinking about it.
Yeah. Made its way to the Booker for Last Call with Carson Daly. That was when they were still just a regular talk show where they would have stand-ups on. And they reached out to me and they were like, hey, we're thinking of doing, because I was doing a lot of material about college life at the time. I was 23. And they were like, oh, we'd love to have you come on and maybe do a segment about, because it was like back to college time. Mm-hmm. I was like, great. And I sent them all these ideas and I never heard back from them. Not a no, not a maybe, nothing, just silence. And I was upset. But I look back at it now and I'm like, oh, thank God. Thank God that I was not shown to the world when I was that green and that unready and that. And part of me goes, I spent 14 years slogging through horrible gigs in order to get to where I am now. Mm-hmm. And I'm so happy.
Right.
Because now
you're refined, yeah.
When that clip went viral, I had a self-produced special on my channel that everybody went to go watch. And then that got, 300,000 views.
And you were ready for it.
I was ready for it.
Right.
And it was, I'm just so happy that it happened at a time where I had a breath of work. Because now, I'm having all these meetings about, selling shows and, and being a part of movies and all this stuff because I'm able to. Whereas if this happened when I was still talentless, which we all were. Right. No matter how much raw potential you have, you need to know how to use it. Mm-hmm. You can't just be ingredients. You have to know how to cook. And so
nice
to have that ready by the time, did it suck for a lot of those 14 years? Absolutely. But I'm really glad it happened the way that it did. And so I don't begrudge any of these Vine stars that then became YouTube stars or whatever it is, these people who, Vine was especially hideous because it was like 6 seconds of a campy facial reaction and then music you don't own the rights to.
Right.
And then that's what made you famous.
Right.
But I don't begrudge them anything because one of two things is going to happen. Either people are going to realize that they don't have more talent than this and someone's going to put them in a project because they have a bunch of fans, they're going to fail. Or they're going to learn and branch out and actually become talented at something.
Right.
And either of those two things is a wonderful solution.
No, I love that you can look at it like that because it's like I could see how like somebody who's been on the road for years can look at something like that who's kind of just like a literal overnight sensation off some vines that they did and then say that's fucking and then just add more to the depression pie, more ingredients to the
yeah. But if I ever open a diner, it's got to serve depression pie.
Depression pie.
Yeah. So, but it's about being lasting. It's about maintaining relevance.
Right.
And if no one wants to be the pet rock. No one wants to be a fad.
Oh, okay. I was like,
oh no, I don't mean like The Rock's pet. The Rock's doing very well. If he wants to adopt me, I'm all for it.
I was about to say this is a pretty good gig there.
I mean the pet rock or the snap bracelet or all the things throughout history that were super. A fidget spinner. Right. There are plenty of things that are more recent, but nobody wants to be that flash in the pan because that's got to destroy you.
Yeah.
To have it. And then have it taken away.
Yeah, just as fast too.
Oh, I wouldn't. That's when it's got to be difficult to live every day.
I was just on the internet the other day, which is a thing.
The latest version of the internet.
The latest version. Wi-Fi. Actually,
you rich people.
It was insane. But and something came across my YouTube, like those thumbnails pop up.
Yeah.
And it said, "What happened to Iggy Azalea?" And I hadn't thought about that shit ever. But I was like, what did happen to Iggy? So I clicked it, and it kind of showed her rise and fall.
Wait, did she fall already?
Yeah, when was the last time you heard of Iggy Azalea?
I just figured she's in between albums. Like, it takes more than...
Nah, she's like struggling for... I hate using the word relevance too. I fucking despise that shit. But she's struggling to find her way. But because she was an Australian rapper who rapped like she was from Harlem.
Yeah,
a hood chick in Harlem.
Yeah.
And it was weird, right? So it was like it was gimmick, but she felt it was authentic. She's like, that's why I grew up on hip hop, and so this is how I express myself. You can say that all you want, but like that's not who you are. You're not from here.
Yeah,
like, rap in Australia, that might pop. I don't know, but that whole and then how she handled the backlash from it.
Yeah,
was instead of saying like. I totally took, but she was trying to present it as herself. But they went through that whole ride and
gotta look this up now.
Yeah, it's interesting as shit. It's interesting as shit. I'm always interested in the human dynamic of why things like Malcolm Gladwell's book Tipping Point, like why things pop and why things don't. And it's an interesting dynamic of why it happens.
Well, there are also a lot of celebrities make the mistake of thinking it's gonna last forever.
Yeah.
But you're only as relevant as the last thing you did.
Andre 3000, one of my favorite writers of all time.
Yeah.
He said, "Baby boy, you only funky as your last cut."
That's absolutely true.
That's what you just said.
I was paraphrasing the great Andre. My version is Andre 3001. It's the latest cut. See, mine was a new cut.
Yours is Andrew 3000.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's absolutely true. And so, I have these heckler videos pop, but like if that was all I did,
right?
How old would that get? How quick?
Right.
And so I'm doing new stuff on my YouTube, but I'm also touring like crazy and making sure that people see me as a stand-up. And I'm working on these TV projects and film and, all this other stuff so that I don't lose this momentum. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because so I've gotten to know some of the, the YouTube stars, mm-hmm. as it were. And some of them are really smart about it. And some of them are looking for projects and, pitching new things and doing what they love. And then some of them are just like, I'm making millions a year. I'll be fine. So, well, there are a lot of people who made millions a year that don't have anything anymore.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, look at sports.
Sports.
Look at how many broke ass former millionaires there are.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Especially, I think it's even more dangerous being a YouTube star.
Yeah.
Because at least in sports, there is a facade of an infrastructure that people will come at you as. But if you're just making all of a sudden you have, I don't know how YouTube works, but if you just start having millions deposited,
yeah, it's pretty much how it
works. But if that just happens, and all of a sudden you don't know,
or hundreds depending on how big your channel is.
Exactly. Right now I'm at a couple dollars.
Yeah.
But after a while that would get overwhelming. You don't know how to manage millions of dollars. People think that you just get millions of dollars and it's just bam. Life is dog. It creates an entire new set of problems that you had no idea even existed.
Now, it's problems I would love to have, but
I understand that. But it's like,
no, but the idea, especially because so many of them are children.
Yeah,
so many of them
you have no idea.
Yeah, and even if they're not, legally children, where they're 18 or 19, it's still arrested development, where they don't just this permanent adolescence. I mean, that's what is going on with the Paul brothers. Logan Paul, and Jake Paul is the other one. Aaron Paul's not related.
No, I never heard of any of these Pauls.
Paul Newman, also not related. The reason, so Logan Paul's channel just got YouTube for the first time, demonetized an entire channel.
Oh, so he can't make any more money off this?
No, because he can make money off of, he pitches his merch to, to these 12-year-olds, but he is a monster. Right. He is someone who, I was very happy when they did that. I thought they should have done it sooner. Right. He is someone who, he filmed himself in the Japanese suicide forest with a goofy hat.
Right.
That's part of what set it off. But it was also he was torturing his neighbors for fun.
Right.
And he would put on video where he'd blast music at 4 a.m. living, for someone who's and they come out and they're like, I have to work the next day. Please stop this. Right. And he'd be like, and then high five is bro.
Bam.
Yeah, it was
40 million hits.
Exactly. It was garbage. And so it is nice when they actually step up and they go, this is not a person. He is negatively affecting our society.
Right.
And YouTube needs to do more of that, frankly.
That's a slippery slope, I think, though. Right. So if you look, and this is where me and the conservative crowd kind of see eye to eye.
Okay.
If you begin to sheriff art, it's a slippery slope, because then everybody's gonna get offended at something. Right?
But hold on a second.
I'm with you. Let's talk.
There is a huge. I like where this is going. First of all, we have slopes everywhere in our society that are not slippery. And the premise that because we do one thing, we're suddenly going to descend into madness. Where are the gay people marrying goats that we were promised? We were promised goat marriage. Where's that happening? That's not happening. Except some of the people who voted against gay marriage might be fucking goats. But the idea of this, slippery slope. Where's Colorado's descent into crime?
Actually, it's actually gone down, actually.
Yeah, it's absolutely gone down. Their standard of living has gone up, and their crime has gone down ever since they legalized marijuana. Mm-hmm. Because the idea of if someone is able to smoke this reefer, then suddenly they're going to murder people.
Right.
There are so many slopes that are not slippery.
Right.
The idea of how do we police thought? It's we're not policing thought. We're not policing art. We are allowing a private institution to determine what they promote. What's wrong with that? What is wrong with YouTube? We're not guaranteed the rights to use their service. They're a private company.
True.
So if the government stepped in and said to YouTube, you've got to take Logan Paul's channel down, I would be very against that.
Okay.
Extremely against that.
Right.
However, the same way that NBC can cancel a show, that's not anyone censoring art. That's them going, we're not doing well on this. And let's this isn't good for the company.
Right.
This isn't good for the brand.
Okay, so it being good for the brand, what does that mean, right? Because if it's
about capitalism, it's about making money.
Well, if Logan Paul is obviously one of their biggest users.
Yeah, but at the same time, they can make anyone that big if they wanted to. It's their network. They have if they just took your podcast and put it on their front page every day.
At YouTube, listen.
Yeah, YouTube. If you're listening, and I know that you are, take Arian Foster's podcast. It's called Now What? This episode in particular. You might not want to showcase this part because it would sound a little bit self-serving. But if you were to take that and just put just expose that person to the world over and over again, they'd be probably bigger than Logan Paul because you've actually got talent.
Thank you, man.
And so you're welcome. So
they were promoting him then.
Well, their algorithm does that.
Right.
But they can make a decision to do that. They can give a YouTube Red project and a billboard to anybody they want. Mm-hmm. And so they can make a new Logan Paul who preferably doesn't torture animals on film.
That doesn't. Okay, I mean that makes sense.
Yeah. So what is good for the brand? A whole bunch of people not hating. I mean, the Logan Paul thing was this international scandal,
right?
And they needed. There was so much pressure for them to step up and do something,
right?
That they had to do something because there were people who were, rioting not in the streets but online,
right?
Rioting in the circuits.
I understand where you're coming from, and while I would probably agree that premise is a little inaccurate, like the slippery slope.
Yeah,
like we'll just go downhill and they'll start demonetizing everything that's controversial.
Yeah, sometimes it's flat land,
flat earthers, but you would have to agree with me that more overwhelmingly companies side with liberal ideas
currently.
Yeah, currently, you're 100% right.
But
currently.
It's a pendulum, and it's so. Chris Bowers is a comic, and he has this great line about.
You're right.
He goes, "Progress is undefeated. It might take some time,
yeah,
and there may be some setbacks. It may be a sine curve, but it's an upward trajectory. Progress is undefeated." And so everybody thinking that. Or not everybody, the people who are thinking that like, oh my God, and Trump is president, and now we're going to go back to the Stone Age. It's like, are you fucking dumb?
Right.
Have you read a book? Right. You should read a book.
Right.
If you want to be on this side, maybe you should read more. I think it's. I actually consider myself a moderate, but I'm a progressive.
Right.
I'm not a liberal. There's a huge difference.
Liberal now is a weird term that I don't even like to touch.
Liberal is like, oh, anything's allowed, and I'm like, no.
But I'm super for social justice and I'm super for equality, but like sometimes it's like, really, bro?
Well, there was a thing I read recently where like the polyamorous community was trying to get recognized in the.
I don't even know what that is.
Polyamorous is someone who wants to fuck more than one person at the same time. It's like people who aren't monogamous in a relationship.
Okay.
And the polyamorous community was trying to get recognized in the same breath as LGBT. And I was like, are you fucking serious?
They have a lot of letters already. I don't think.
Yeah. Have you been, I'm sorry. And I'm not talking about like polygamous. I'm talking about like the idea of, like polyamory is just, you got a girlfriend and then you also fuck somebody else and then you
promiscuous.
Yeah, exactly. And so to me, I see something like that and I'm just like, no.
That's insane.
So I've drawn a line.
Yeah.
I've drawn a line.
I've drawn a line and it's right here.
Yeah, and the idea of like, and people having a term for everything, like on these, so I'm single now, and on these dating apps, the have you ever heard of sapiosexual?
No.
Sapiosexual, it's such a dumb term. It means someone who is attracted to someone who is intelligent. It's like, oh, you mean someone with standards?
Right. That's
I have standards.
What is it called again?
Sapiosexual.
Sapiosexual.
And I'm just like, fucking say.
Definitely sapiosexual.
Yeah, me too. So are a lot of people. But the
people that are not though.
Yeah, they aren't. But the idea of like, it's funny because
sapiosexual.
if you're sapiosexual, like if you call yourself sapiosexual, I think the people you are attracted to are too smart to respect that term.
Wow.
But
the irony.
Yeah, but my point is that like there are a lot of things that I do draw the line at, and I do say, okay, no. But when you look at something like a private company, okay, let's go down the rabbit hole.
All right.
So YouTube says, you know what? We don't like Logan Paul, and we all cheer. And then they go, you know what? We also don't like this other thing, and we're all like, wait, what?
Right.
And then they do that a bunch. Eventually, someone else is going to come out and create a competitor.
So you're saying capitalism will eventually even the playing field?
Where did Barstool Sports come from?
White people. I don't know.
Barstool Sports came from a backlash against how antiseptic ESPN had gotten.
Really?
ESPN had become this, like, we can't talk about anything controversial.
Right.
I mean, they're Disney.
Mm-hmm.
And so ESPN became this
politically correct.
It was boring.
Yeah. Right.
And yeah, there's still a lot of aspects of it I enjoy a great deal.
Right.
But the flavor of it became so boring that there were a lot of people who, when Barstool came out, and they were just like, fuck this shit.
Right.
And people were like, I like to curse. Well, that speaks to me.
Yeah.
And then Barstool became a thing. And now they're getting much bigger. And there will always be reactions to a reaction. It's how it works.
It's, to me, because we're, like I always tell people, the internet is still in its infancy.
Yeah.
And what it's doing is, I don't know if there's got to be some kind of books or articles by psychologists on this, but what it's doing to humanity is intriguing to me. And I think one of those things is that it's siphoning out things that you don't want and slowly honing in and really, I don't want to say dividing people, but it definitely it has that aspect to it, because I don't like the ESPN, so I'm going to Barstool.
Yeah.
Then fans are from Barstool, so I don't like this certain part, so I'm going to go here, and it's slowly putting people in different pockets.
It is, but those pockets don't last. You know,
think so?
Are you into the same things now that you were 10 years ago? I mean, I'm sure some things.
Yeah, not really, no.
But you know what? I'm still a fan of the same teams I was a fan of, because I'm not an asshole.
I'm not that, actually. That's funny.
Well, that's because you were employed by some.
Exactly.
But other than that, you know, I mean, when I was in my early 20s, you know, I played guitar, and I loved it. And I have
still play?
So poorly.
Man.
I've maybe touched a guitar 5 times in the last decade. But it was a thing I was really into. And then I was poor at the time. I had to sell my guitar. And then I just moved on to something else.
Right.
What the internet has done, both good and bad, is unite us with like-minded communities.
I would agree with that 100%.
And the reason I say it can be bad is, like, okay, back in the day, I think there are many fewer radicalized people today than there used to be. There's more compassion.
You think so?
I think there's more compassion than there's ever been. There's less what about me-ism than there's ever been. There's still plenty of assholes out there.
Yeah.
But back in the day, if you were an insane person, you wanted to take a lot of people out, what would you do? You would go to a marketplace and wield a sword and maybe get a couple of people before someone got you.
Right.
Now, there are fewer people that would ever want to do that, but those people have access to information from like-minded communities of crazies that they can build a bomb like the Boston Marathon.
Good point.
And so it's fewer people, but they can do more damage individually.
Right.
And so,
but then there's a greater chance, to your point, there's a greater chance that they find people who are like-minded that they can bond with and eventually.
That is true.
Calm that shit down.
Well, but in both ways.
Yeah, exactly.
There are those, you know what the incel community is? Involuntarily celibate. It's people who are blaming other people for them not being able to get laid.
That's a great community, actually.
It's so disgusting. It's so disgusting. And because they have other people who validate this shitty worldview, like,
but then they can get together and fuck each other.
But no, it's like it's all straight dudes.
Okay, then that's the problem.
Yeah, it's not like there's, you know, and then like suddenly one girl comes in, everybody's like, bah! You know,
you're right. That would be weird.
It's like back in the day, if you were like, I can't get laid, it's stupid women's fault.
Right.
There'd be like a guy you work with or someone who'd just be like, no, it's not
at all,
asshole. No. Right. I have this joke where I talk about like the guys who are like, there's a war on men. I'm like, no, there's a war on Philip. Just you, man. The rest of us are doing fine. It's just you,
Philip.
But the problem is like that guy gets together with another Philip. And look, if you're listening, your name is Philip. I'm not targeting you.
I'm talking to you, Philip.
I know you feel attacked right now. But you get together with someone else like that, and then you validate each other's crazy.
Right. That's where the danger comes.
Yeah, that's where it gets bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's a slippery slope.
Damn it! Yeah.
No, but the internet has brought me to people that I am forever grateful for, and it is a real place. I love it. There are negative parts to it, but in whole, I think it's going to eventually help humanity save itself. Hopefully.
Yeah.
I'm pessimistic about people, but there's this term called emergence. Mm-hmm. So it's like you have an ant colony, and this ant colony, one ant together like by itself is kind of, I don't say stupid, but no disrespect to ants if you're listening.
No, it's pretty stupid.
But like it doesn't have any purpose.
Oh, I'm an ant. I can lift 3 times my weight. Yeah.
Strong ants, but stupid.
Yeah.
but when you get them in a colony, they develop systems and ecosystems, and they have order and structure and a hierarchy, and there's just emergence that comes out of that from who knows what, right? All my theists out there is like, see, there is a God. But I think that anything in groups, schools of fish, there's this emergence of a cumulative intellect that eventually happens, and I think that's going to happen with the internet. I think right now it's like it's boiling, like what are we doing with this, and eventually we're gonna reach a point where it's like the dust settles and like we know where we're going and what we're doing. When I think it is we're gonna settle on science and exploration.
But that's why net neutrality is so important.
True.
That's why keeping the internet open is so important.
Yes.
Because it will allow the free market is a wonderful thing, but we have to protect ourselves from ourselves sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so I lean libertarian, but I'm not libertarian because I don't think we're ready for it yet. And
that's a great point, actually.
Thank you. I was able to have a friendly debate with the 2004 presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party, Michael Badnarik. We had lunch together, and he said, he's like, knowing your views, why aren't you libertarian? And I said, I don't think we're ready yet. And he said, well, how do you teach your kid how to drive? You eventually give them the keys to the car. And I said, yeah, but you don't do that when they're 4.
Right.
And that's what I think we are right now. Yeah. I think we're still children. And when it comes to how we treat each other, when it comes to how we are willing to protect each other instead of our own self-interest, like that's why I just don't think we're ready for that yet.
I think these old people in Congress have to die off, man. I hate to say that, but it's the truth. These lawmakers with these old ideas and these old traditions, like the State of the Union speech. Yeah. So I never really watched the State of the Union before, but I'm retired and have plenty of time to look into politics. So I'm looking at the State of the Union, and when you look back, this was the tradition. It's just a big circle jerk, and you sit there and we've done this, and half of the crowd claps and half of the crowd looks pissed, and you look. Yeah. It's just been the same way for. What the fuck do we have? We don't need that shit. We don't need that shit.
So
that shit needs to die out.
And everybody views the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and all of those documents as sacred.
Yeah,
and as gospel.
And I don't.
Here's why I don't.
Slave owners and
think about your racist grandfather. I mean, not yours, although maybe
I want to call him racist. Way. No, I don't call him racist. I think he's
but every
more
one of
partial
us,
to colored folk, though.
Yeah, but every one of us had. Think about someone in your life, the old person in your life, whether it was your grandfather, your grandmother, a great aunt, whatever it was, who had these old ass ideas. Her grandmother's grandfather's grandmother's grandfather.
Right.
That's who came up with those.
Right.
So don't you think that maybe they're a little antiquated?
Of course.
But so many people are just like, but that's what we were founded on. I was like, no, we were founded on rebellion is what we were founded
100%. And also, I mean, they had the wherewithal to put the capability of amending some of these stupid ideas. Yeah. And so we have to take advantage of that. And there's still a lot of stupid ideas in there.
Yeah.
There's some stupid ideas in there.
There absolutely are. I have that joke about, I think you've seen me do it, that joke about the 7th Amendment. Mm-mm. I don't know. Okay, maybe you haven't seen me do the joke. It's in a bit about gun control, but I talk about like how dumb the 7th Amendment is. And in the joke, I'm like, no one in this room even knows what the 7th Amendment says.
I was just about to Google.
And exactly. And, and the 7th Amendment, part of it at least, says that every civil matter involving more than $20 can go to full jury trial.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then part in the joke, I go, or maybe it doesn't. You don't fucking know. But that is what it says. And the reason for that is because at the time, that was a good financial standard. Mm-hmm. But obviously, due to inflation, the current standard for that, I think, is $75,000, the current legal standard that they use. Right. But they've never changed that.
Right.
So why can one just not be followed?
Right.
And then another one be gospel?
Well, that Second Amendment shit is always hilarious to me. Because if you look at it, it's for protecting yourself from a tyrannical government.
Yeah.
and you're supposed to be able to arm yourselves with what the government is arming themselves with. That was the notion of the Second Amendment. They had guns back then. That was the biggest form of weapons.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Now it's drones and atom bombs. Do you think your neighbor next door should have a drone and an atom bomb? Fuck no.
Yeah.
Like, there has to be some regulations here. Like, they had no idea. Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, they had no idea that this was going to happen.
The best commercial I saw for that was this guy comes in to shoot up an office with a 17th century gun. And he shoots, and he misses.
Right.
And then everybody scatters, and he's cleaning out and reloading the gun. And it takes like 2 minutes. Right. And by then, no one else is in the office anymore.
Right.
And they were like, this is why that was okay.
Right.
That's not the same anymore.
That shit's hilarious.
Yeah, it illustrated the point really well.
This shit is beautiful, man. Man, this has been a beautiful talk, bro. We friends, man. So, we're going to turn off the podcast and continue talking. But for those of the people that don't know you, they can find you where?
So my YouTube, obviously, just and on all social media, you just put in Steve Hofstetter, even if you spell it wrong, and Google will correct you.
Google will correct
you. But the big thing is my new book, March 20th.
Yes.
I have a book called Ginger Kid.
Yes.
It's much funnier than this conversation. This conversation was serious, and that's part of also why I like talking
serious.
to you.
It got serious.
Yeah, there were some fun moments. There were some jokes. But yeah, Ginger Kid. It's called Ginger Kid, Mostly True Tales of a Former Nerd.
Right.
Former being the joke. And it's about going through high school, and a lot of it deals with bullying and not how you stop bullying, but how you rise above it, and kind of finding comedy as a way out. And I think it's very relatable to anyone who's ever felt less than, and that's who it's for.
No, I appreciate you, bro. You're a great human being, and I'm glad we met. I'm glad we finally got you on the podcast, man. You can be a reoccurring guest because you are a wordsmith.
Well, thank you. Great human being, professional asshole. That's what.
Perfectly put.
It is a pleasure, and also same to you. There are. Because I do a lot of sports writing and, talking head stuff, I have gotten to know a number of athletes over the years. And it is, and some of them are my dear friends, but it's so much fun to, like, I forget sometimes that you played football. That's no knock on you're very 4-time Pro Bowler. You're very good.
I was a killer.
But I just mean that, like, it's, being able to just chop it up with you, that's great.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's a better compliment than, hey, I like the way you ran into the rectangle.
You were on my fantasy team, and you did really well for me one season.
There's nothing more I despise than that shit.
Oh, but for the listeners, Hitler, I mean it.
Trump, fantasy football.
But this podcast is. This is it's already taken off, but this is going to be for the people who listen now. You're going to be the people who in a year are going to be like, I was there in the first couple episodes.
Oh, man, I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I hope so. I'm going to keep grinding it out, man. So I appreciate you being a fan of the show. So as a fan of the show, you understand how we leave it every time.
Yeah.
So if you would look in that camera and try to get my man Jim Carrey to come on, that would be lovely.
All right, Jim. I'm the first comedian who's done the show, right?
You're the first comedian.
All right, Jim, as a fellow colleague, look, you and I have been through very similar experiences. I, as someone who played a lot of garbage strip mall gigs, and you, as a movie star, we can relate to each other. But here's the thing, Jim. This has been a really fun time. It's not just about, you can talk to people and you can get what you want to say out there, but it's also just a good time. So, Jim Carrey, come on, hang out. You will not regret it.
My man. I appreciate you, bro. And we shall continue rocking, man. But like again, it's a morning. You drove out here in the beautiful LA rush hour traffic, man. So I appreciate that commute, man. And shout out to your dog Walter, man. He's a trooper throughout this process too.
Yeah, he's getting there.
Much love to Walter, man. So I appreciate you coming on, man. And we'll highlight you later.
All right.
Yes,
Bye.
sir.